Now, I'm not one to gossip, but I will bring you the tea. Welcome to Chronicle Speaks. So Miss Brittish Williams, formerly of Basketball Wives LA, was recently sentenced to 4 years in prison for committing $564,000 worth of fraud, including tax fraud, bank fraud, insurance fraud, and 3 separate pandemic fraud schemes. Brittish was the former girlfriend and fiance of NBA star Lorenzo Gordon. Now, she said in an interview with Carlos King that at one point their home was in foreclosure, and she did many of these schemes to stay afloat and keep her family living comfortably. And typically when there's smoke, there's fire. And just as easily as her house of fraudulent cards came tumbling down, her ex Lorenzo wasn't too far behind her. When asked in an interview with Carlos King just a month ago if Lorenzo knew anything about her crimes, she said,
somewhat. It might have been some instances that he didn't know anything about, but like most of the time I would say yes.
And a month later, Lorenzo was hit with a federal indictment. He is currently charged with 3 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of theft of government property. Lorenzo, just like Brittish, is accused of COVID-19 pandemic fraud, and they are saying he collected over $273,000. Was this interview and her admitting that he knew the reason that the feds came looking for him? We shall soon see, but before we do, please be sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on any news regarding this case and so much more. Now let's get back into it. So we broke down the Brittish Williams indictment in a previous video. You can click the link above to catch up. But what we never spoke about was her sentencing. She was sentenced in October to 4 years after pleading guilty to 15 felonies, 5 counts of misuse of a social security number, 4 counts of bank fraud, 3 counts of making false statements to the IRS, and 3 counts of wire fraud. The sentencing was so intense, to say the least. A member of her entourage actually tried to hit a photographer, and I'm going to tell you this, y'all from St. Louis do not play, because dude did not even flinch. Now keep in mind that she was sentenced in October, but the judge advised that she was able to remain free until January 3rd, 2024. Well, a day before she was supposed to arrive at the Alderson Federal Prison Camp in West Virginia, her Chicago-based attorney filed a motion to reduce her sentence to a little over 2.5 years. Well, she didn't show up on the 3rd, and on the 4th, her attorney actually filed another document requesting that she be allowed to report to prison even later so she wouldn't have to travel between West Virginia and St. Louis for a hearing in the motion to reduce her sentence. So at this point, it's given, I'm in charge, I do what I want, I'm a celebrity, but sis, not to the feds. Federal prosecutors were like, first off, she's not even eligible for a sentence reduction, so that's off the table. And the prosecution was looking at her attorney like, we're surprised that you felt that her failure to appear is justified by a pending sentence request. So the judge denied it, and a week later, she had to be picked up and was arrested. She's currently in jail, but federal officials would not release the information as to where. So that caught you up on Brittish. Let's get into Lorenzo's indictment. So again, I told you that Brittish revealed to Carlos King that Lorenzo indeed knew about her criminal activities. After he saw the interview, he took to his Instagram page and said, "Dear Brittish Williams, I saw the interview with Carlos King. I heard a lot of lies. If you did anything illegal while dating me, I wasn't aware. I told the government you were innocent in my eyes. I wasn't aware of any criminal activity during the years of us dating. I am a man. I can always stand on my truth. I made millions during my career. I didn't retire broke. Gambling was a major problem with our finances. I took you around the world. I brought you cars, purses, trips, businesses, and my career is how you got on TV. Even on the last season, I filmed for free to help you have a storyline, and I had money last year, so I had no reason to do TV, but I will take on the chin that I didn't take care of you 2 years out of 10 years as a man." In other words, Lorenzo was like,
now why am I in it? And you could have did it. See how I get it wrong because you never apologized.
Lorenzo did not want to get hemmed up in her mess. He was like, "Look, I told them I didn't even think you had anything to do with it. Don't try to bring me in." Well, I don't know what got the feds hot on his case. I'm not sure if it was the interview or not. However, he was hit with an indictment yesterday. The Manner and Means says this: "It was part of the scheme that on or about June 19, 2020, the defendant, Lorenzo Gordon, caused the submission of an EIDL loan application in the name of Logo Fitness LLC. In the application, the defendant falsely stated that Logo Fitness LLC had gross revenues of $96,475 in the 12 months prior to the COVID pandemic, when in truth and in fact, as the defendant well knew, Logo Fitness LLC was established in 2020 and had not had the amount of gross revenues in the 12 months prior to the COVID pandemic. As a result of the false and fraudulent representation submitted by the defendant in the Logo Fitness LLC EIDL application, the SBA issued an advance of $9,000 on or about June 23, 2020, and a loan of $39,200 on or about June 26, 2020, to a bank account controlled by the defendant. It was further part of the scheme that on or about June 22, 2020, the defendant Lorenzo Gordon caused the submission of an EIDL loan application in the name of Elite 50 Basketball Training LLC. In the application, the defendant falsely stated that Elite 50 Basketball Training LLC had gross revenues of $234,656 in the 12 months prior to the COVID pandemic, when in truth and in fact, and as the defendant well knew, Elite 50 Basketball Training LLC was established in 2020 and had not had that amount of gross revenues in the 12 months prior to the COVID pandemic. As a result of the false and fraudulent representation submitted by the defendant in the Elite 50 Basketball Training LLC loan application, the SBA issued an advance of $10,000 on or about June 23, 2020, and a loan of $107,300 on or about June 29, 2020, to a bank account controlled by the defendant. It was further part of the scheme that on or about April 16, 2021, the defendant Lorenzo Gordon caused the submission of a PPP loan application in the name of Lorenzo Gordon Janitorial Services. In the application, the defendant falsely stated that he was the sole proprietor of a janitorial service business since May 2017, when in truth and in fact, and as the defendant well knew, the defendant was not the sole proprietor of a janitorial service. As a result of the false and fraudulent representation submitted by the defendant in the Lorenzo Gordon Janitorial loan application, Prestamos issued a loan of $20,832 on or about April 29, 2021, to a bank account controlled by the defendant. On or about these dates set forth below, in the Eastern District of Missouri and elsewhere, the defendant, having devised and intended to devise a scheme to obtain money by means of materially false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises as specifically described in the paragraphs above, for the purpose of executing the scheme described above, and an attempt to do so, caused to be transmitted by means of wire communication in interstate commerce the signals and sounds described below for each count, each transmission constituting a separate count, all in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 1343. So to me, it sounds like Lorenzo heard about people getting money from the government due to the COVID pandemic, but the key to getting that money is that your business had to be open at least 12 months prior to your application. So that means that any new businesses would not get the money. However, Lorenzo was like, I'm going to jump on board, and that's what it sounds like he did. Now, British actually had legitimate businesses that had been open for a while. She applied, but she applied under false information regarding her business income, her business payroll, and she also did not submit her personal criminal history. Certain people that have been convicted of certain crimes would not be eligible for this money, so she did not advise them of her criminal history. However, 2 months after she applied for her loans, he started applying for his. So I think when sis said he knew, that's exactly what she meant. He knew because he was doing it right along with her. She didn't come out and say it that way, but she definitely said he knew. And I feel like her saying that got the feds on his case, because I just don't understand why they weren't on him prior, why they weren't on him when they were on her. I just don't understand that. She wasn't on trial when Carlos asked that question. When Carlos asked that question, I would have been like, child, I don't know. I don't even think so. Leave it at that, because honestly, you want him there to help raise your baby. It's nothing worse than both parents being locked up while this young baby is there. She needs at least one of them. Now both of them about to be gone. You know Lorenzo is not going to be able to beat the feds. He's facing 4 counts. She pled to 15. We're going to have to see what goes on with this indictment and how this case continues to go on for him. A lot of people are feeling like she snitched. I don't feel like she did. I just think that she did not answer the question properly. But in the meantime, in between time, what I need to do is hear from you. What do you think about Brittish Williams actually running, child? She was not trying to get caught. They had to go find sis. Sis was trying to get that reduced sentence. And also, what do you think about Lorenzo and his new indictment? Leave a comment and you know how we do. We'll talk about it down below. Talk to you guys later. Bye. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and hit that bell so you don't miss any of my new episodes.